This is TWiT.
Apple doesn't have a booth at CES. They haven't. Have they ever had a booth? They haven't in a long time had a booth at CES, but they are there, as CNET says, in the snarkiest way possible. The big ad on the side of the the Spring Hill Suites. That's a Marriott right next to the convention center. Says what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. Apple.com/privacy.
Yeah,
that's
so long as you're not in China or any of the other countries where Apple says, "Hey, government, who wants to turn an iPhone into a yoke of
I don't think so. I think that actually what Apple's giving
that Apple's not. I'm personal opinion only. I don't think Apple is allowed to take a victory lap like that until they have some statement that says that there are limits to what we will allow a government to do to its own people through our phones.
Well,
they have not earned that right yet.
I believe that what they've given China is access to iCloud, which they do in the United States as well, not to the phone. They have, but I'm sure that's why that billboard is very specific to the phone, is because they're not giving access to the phone; they're giving access to the cloud.
Unless you put a third-party app on the phone that exfiltrates all your information to Facebook.
Yeah, I mean that's.
Right.
No,
but that's. I mean, from the point of view of a consumer, as soon as you start using your phone, now it's not Apple's fault, but it shouldn't. And you shouldn't pretend that phone is isolated from the rest of the world. There's plenty other stuff on there. It's giving away the store, including, by the way, Google's own apps, as well as Facebook, right? They're not more private on that iPhone than they are on an Android phone.
Well, they are. It depends on what apps you use. Yeah. Which I've taken, by the way, most of those apps off my phone.
Yeah.
So I just took them off, and the thing is, it wasn't for privacy is great. It was mostly for calm mind. So I find that taking most of the social networks off, only using them when I'm on a desktop, which is becoming less, as you can see in front of me, less and less.
Michael Simon and Macworld also points out that billboard is on the side of a Marriott.
Oh, I love that.
Whoops.
I love it.
Good catch, Michael. Yeah. So, but I think, certainly every security guru I know says I would never use an Android phone. I would only use an iPhone. So, it is encrypted. It's encrypted by default. So far, they've managed to hold the line against law enforcement. Even in China, I don't think the Chinese government can get into the phone.
And I think, again, their greatest danger is not China, it's Australia. And really the Five Eyes.
Yeah. But can
you explain a little bit about that in case folks don't know the Australia thing? Because this is news to me. I don't know what you're talking about.
Australia's passed a law. I don't know if it's gotten through all of it, but basically, so
it's not in effect yet, but it has passed.
It has passed that theoretically could give them the ability to force Apple to open up a phone. Now, this is not, in my opinion, this is not Australia. This is the United States. So the United States is part of a consortium between United States, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the UK, generally known as the Five Eyes.
Yeah.
So what the United States wants is they want into the phone, and what in Australia is a quiet place where they don't get so many complaints. So so if you do it when they try to do it in the United States, they get all kinds of letters to the people's congressmen, and then it's not fun anymore. When they do it in Australia, it just passes right through. Because they don't get the same resistance. But it's basically a backdoor that once Apple opens it to Australia, or if they're forced by Australian authorities to open that phone, of course, what's going to happen is the United States is going to come in behind it. China's going to come in behind it. And the problem with all of this, with all of the let us into your phone, and it's for law enforcement, is we just always have to remember. I agree that getting valid terrorist information and so on and so forth is important. But we have to remember that the NSA cannot even keep track of their own secrets. This is not, like when they lose what they lost to Snowden, what they lost in Germany, they cannot even hold on to things that they know are important. So if they can't hold on to their own secrets, how are they going to hold on to a bunch of people they don't even know? And the answer is they're not going to. So opening this up is not a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's a matter of the ability to keep it confidential and the inability of our most secret agency, well, not really, but almost most secret agency, of their inability to actually protect themselves means they're not going to protect us.
Wow.
Yeah, and the other problem is that it's one of those really poorly written laws that simply says that law enforcement can compel a company to unlock a phone, and without saying, well, what if it's impossible? Well, that's your problem. We have the ability to compel you to do that. Also, anybody, if Apple has, let's say, an employee in Australia. If they have an employee in Australia, the fact that this Apple employee is in Australia means that they can be compelled by the government to unlock a phone, and also held onto a secrecy binding, which means that they can't. Which means that not only are they not allowed to tell the public or the person whose phone has been affected, but they can also be compelled to say, unlock this phone and don't tell Apple that you've done this, or your bosses you've done this. That's how poorly written this law is. But I still say that that's something that's kind of a little bit above the waterline. It's when you get into problems like Apple has to remove the Taiwanese flag from the emoji library on the iPhone because Taiwan does not exist inside China, and they went ahead and they did that. And so what happens if they say that their keyboard cannot be allowed to post pictures of Winnie the Pooh because we feel as though that is derogatory against the party.
I think that I think Apple has a core of what they're willing to protect and what they're not willing to protect, and I think that we can see what that looks like. I'm just always surprised when I looked at the Australian thing. I'm just like, you're Australians. How can you be lackeys for the United States? I mean, you're Australians. You have a different level of expectation of them to be rebels and for them to push back, and instead they've just done what the United States wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
We'll see what the upshot of that is. That was passed in December. Quick pre-recess legislation that nobody really took a look at, and we've been talking about it since it passed in December, but
it's a big mess.
It is kind of...
But it's probably, and I still think that is Apple's number one, because so much of their world is wrapped around privacy that opening that up...
It's a good thing for them to push, and I want to see those ads because it forces them to step up. If it's not just marketing, you gotta step up. In fact, I think Microsoft, we were talking on Windows Weekly last Wednesday, Microsoft has an opportunity here to back down on some of the spyware that they put on their systems and step up and say, we're also a privacy company. The two companies that can't are Google and Amazon and Facebook, 3 companies that can't. And so it's important that companies that can, because their business model is different, do, I think.
And I have to admit, this has been a shift for me. I for a long time I was like, you can't be private. I mean, privacy is a useless thing to try to be because there's too much out there. There's too much data, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm nearly a one-issue voter about it at this point. Like I almost feel like when we go into 2020, I want to hear what, like if a candidate says, I'm willing to break into someone's phone, there is nothing else they can say that would allow me to vote for them.
It's tough.
Nothing to come out of their mouth.
Because in general, I think when you phrase it, well, we want to catch bad guys and terrorists, so we need to get access to their phones. They can't be able to communicate privately. Most people in America hearing that sentence will say, yeah, you're right.
We have so much data.
I know.
So much data.
I know. I mean, I think technologists, I think we understand why that's not doable without compromising all of us.
And to be clear, I don't
know if that message is gotten out.
I don't have a problem with metadata and who we called and all that stuff. I think that's
valuable too.
It is valuable, but I think that there's a valid reason for that.
Somewhere.
But you draw the line, like that is the line where I say, yeah, because I'm not going to talk about it. We got TV back one time because of that. So, but I understand how that works, and I understand why it's important, and I think that there's a lower limit to when that's okay, and I think the metadata is fine, and I understand why the NSA wants to get all of it all the time, because you want to be able to rewind 10 years back to see before that guy thought about being a terrorist, who was he talking to? And so that all makes sense to me, but I think that we have to say there's an enclave that is our phone and the data that's on it that that the government doesn't get to be part of. Yeah.
Especially because so many folks use our brains are not meant to be storage devices. They're meant to be processing devices. They're not meant to be storage devices. And, there are plenty of psychological studies that talk about how by trying to bog down our brain with a bunch of things to remember, it's not good for us. And so oftentimes people use tools to keep those things instead of trying to have their brain remember everything. And so in that sense, our devices become these tools that store our thoughts and our memories and our relationships and our interactions and so much of who we are in a way, because, you know, at the end of the day, what is a person but their memories and their experiences and things like that. And so essentially, when you look at this tool that you use to exist as a human and reach out to other people and live, for a government to request full and complete access to that, how is that much different than asking for full and complete access to me as an individual? And that's, I was the same way. I used to be very kind of like, well, we're online. I guess I don't really have a reasonable right to privacy. But it was actually Georgia Dow who sort of kind of swayed me a little bit, because she's very staunch privacy advocate. And, you know, when I started to think about it, and particularly from that psychological aspect, it changed the way that I feel about this. Because, yeah, I mean, you can learn a lot about who I am by getting access to this device. And then there's also just the fact that it's kind of lazy of the NSA to just say, oh, can we just have everything? That's going to make it so much easier for us. You know, I mean, we could figure out exactly what it is we're looking for and then request just those things. But why don't you just give us a key so we can get in and get everything? And, well, if something ends up leaking, oh, well, we've already got enough of that oh well stuff with Marriott and the credit reporting agencies and all of these other places that leak all the time and get little slaps on the wrist. It needs to be locked up a lot better.
There need to be consequences. We need to have some sort of a Bill of Rights, simply. So the reason why all these things keep happening is that all you have to do if you lose the data of millions and millions of people is say,
yeah.
You don't have to, I mean, you just say, oh, gosh, isn't that horrible? Well, here's a press release for you at 7 p.m. on a Friday.
And we're going to give you a year's free credit monitoring. Just because.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There are consequences there are consequences for dumping poison into a water supply, and it's not oops, our bad. Everybody have a free voucher for pizza. It's no, there are supposed to be actual punishments, and right now we've been experimenting with lack of regulation, and now it's not really working out for us. So now we need to regulate control of data.